Hello to all the Patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 148 of the Canadian Patriot Podcast, the #1 live podcast in Canada, recorded Monday, August 27th, 2018. I'm Liberal Tim, standing in as host for Andrew, who's quite busy at work, and Gavin is running someone to the airport. And I got to tell you, if you've never been seen at the airport with Gavin, that's something you want in your life. So anyway, I'm a husband and father of 3, a sports shooter, and the owner and operator of Tim's Good T-shirts. They're quite good. I'm also a proud descendant of immigrants. We'd love to hear your feedback about the show. Please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email us at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. A version of the show is available on Stitcher and at iTunes. You can check the podcast out on Facebook.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast and Instagram at Instagram.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast. We need your help to support the show. Visit www.patreon.com/CPP and become a Patreon. You can get a better quality version of the show for just $1 per episode. And the more you pledge, the better the rewards are. You can show you're not a communist by buying a CPP t-shirt for just $19.99 plus shipping and theft. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Go to the homepage and follow the link on the right. Once again, Arrowhead Coffee is bringing us this episode of Canadian Patriot Podcast. Arrowhead Coffee is owned and operated by Canadian Armed Forces veterans. They love their country, the true north, strong and free, their family and friends. Join Arrowhead Coffee on their hunt for the perfect brew and to raise morale and bring that feeling of home to you no matter where you are. A portion of all profits helps Canadian Armed Forces members, veterans, and their families. Arrowhead Coffee brings us, what are we drinking? What am I drinking? What is Tim drinking? Well, if you've listened to the show before, you can take a guess. I'm drinking 40 Creek Copper Pot and reverse osmosis water. So, I'm going to dive right into the news. Trudeau formally announces he'll run in next year's election. This is brought to us by the Toronto Sun. Justin Trudeau has said he'll run again in the 2019 election. The Liberal leader announced it at his party event. He has mentioned he would like to tackle a number of challenges, including protecting Canada's oceans. I didn't know we owned any, but apparently he's out to protect them. So maybe we'll make an ocean. That would be fun. It'd probably be very costly. Good tax project. Raising the standard of living for Indigenous peoples, because he couldn't do anything about that in the past 3 years. But let's try again. I think he's good for it this time. And he's going to narrow the gap between the rich and poor. Well, I don't think the rich will like that. But anyway, good luck to you in the 2019 election. In other news, political, Maxime Bernier has quit the quote-unquote morally corrupt Conservatives and plans to start his own party, a new party. He's actually concerned about this with Conservatives is who are keen to beat the Liberals in 2019 is that he's going to, of course, split the right vote, and polling is showing that this is possible. He already has some very early polling in Quebec was saying that he has like 13% of the vote there, and he doesn't even have a party yet. It's just Maxime Bernier. So that might be a very valid concern. It might weaken the chances of the Conservatives to beat the Liberals in 2019. So, which is really unfortunate. I really wish Bernier had become elected party leader. I wish Andrew Scheer all the best in defeating the Liberals, but I think Maxime had much more strong libertarian principles, and that would have benefited everyone with a smaller government and less restrictions on our freedoms. In other news, Montreal is the second city, I think, after Toronto, calling for a national handgun ban. They were saying that firearms do not belong in Canada's cities, and it's just I disagree. I think firearms can be anywhere as long as people that own firearms are not violent criminals. But Montreal, of course, doesn't have any formal power to enact the ban, but the motion on Monday was timely. Day before the federal cabinet meets in Nanaimo, BC, where the ministers were expected to discuss a handgun ban. So it's showing that Justin Trudeau is showing a willingness to consider a handgun ban. Got a shout out for to the YouTube comments. Thank you, then Victory and RWB. Yeah, I just the show must go on. I'm not the best choice. I'm not the host that you deserve, but I am the host that you have. So. In other news, Ottawa says it will not move on the handgun ban. No, I do not want to sign up to the Globe and Mail. Thank you for the offer. Oh, here's another offer. It's even better than that offer. No, I don't want to join up with the Globe and Mail still. Okay, we're going to have to ignore that story. The Globe and Mail is too ignorant to deal with. That this is interesting in relation to the handgun bans. The seizure of guns made of canes, broomsticks, bicycles are on the rise, says Winnipeg police. Guns are a growing problem in the city of Winnipeg, according to local law enforcement officials. Whether it's due to drug addiction or gang activity, criminals are getting more creative in the weapons they use. So, from broomsticks to bicycles, Murray says criminals are using all manner of items to build homemade weapons. It was Constable Jay Murray of the Winnipeg Police. It's seeing more and more instances of improvised weapons being used in robberies and assaults. And these are like, I'm looking at the pictures here, and we got, yeah, that is a broomstick. Wow, that's shocking. There's if you want to go to the globalnews.ca and look for guns, improvising weapons, increasing Winnipeg, you can see several interesting homemade guns. And one was, in fact, made out of a wooden broomstick. So not even a metal broomstick handle. It was a wooden broomstick. It's pretty interesting. There's one in the middle there made of some sort of a metal tube. And they used painter's green tape to do something to it. So part of the gun's construction is painter's tape. The tape known to come off of surfaces easily without leaving adhesive or marking. That's interesting. Also, a very well-made sword cane at the bottom. Anyone with an interest in sword canes, or not sword canes, gun canes. I do like sword canes. Thanks for asking. I recommend you check with your local authorities about the legalities of having a cane that shoots. I wouldn't recommend it. And yes, that was the broomstick guy should get a bonus point for creativity. That I don't know what that was. He's just like, "What are you doing?" I'm just walking my broomstick. And it's just like, I just don't understand, how you can do that. How you can manufacture a firearm without having any interest in chamber pressures and whatnot, and just put some sort of pistol round in a hollowed out wooden broomstick handle and just hope for the best. So, oh, those criminals. So, why only Tim on the podcast? I mentioned earlier in the show, Andrew is super busy with work. He's not having much fun at all, and Gavin had to make take someone to the airport. So. Anyway, there'll be a lot. Some of the stories that we're not going to get to tonight, we will round out with a full panel. So maybe next week. Manitoba gun amnesty pulled in almost 200 unwanted firearms. This is from the Global News, the global news. Month-long amnesty in Manitoba, with 13 different police agencies, rounded up almost 700 firearms and 22,000 rounds of ammunition. The program was held out to Manitobans for a chance to turn in potentially dangerous items without charges being laid against them, unless the item had been used to commit a crime or was stolen. So if you've that's an interesting program. I'd like to see whoever wrote that program is well, they're a goddamn genius. It's so you can hand it a gun, but if you ever used it in a crime, you should just keep that gun. They don't want that gun. Or if it had been stolen, if someone had stolen this gun, they don't want that one either. They don't want to recover stolen property, especially if it's lethal. And they don't want any guns being actively used in crimes to be removed. That's pretty interesting. I don't know if that's fault of policy writers or if that's the fault of the Global News from this July 31st article. Anyway, charges will result in any of the 700 firearms turned in or the 22,000 rounds. One of the more interesting things that was handed in was a 9-pound cannonball. So I'm glad that's off the street. And the Portage La Prairie RCMP also got an unusual call about a bomb in July that would have been stored in the basement, but the bomb turned out to be not operational. So here's a question. If a bomb is not operational, is it still a bomb? That's, yeah, you could use that for bowling. Were there some of the feedback? Were there airsoft guns, pellet guns, and toys? More than likely, there would have been prohibited things. The pictures aren't extensive. There certainly isn't 700 firearms in the pictures. It's a nice Lee Enfield. Oh, a nice pump action shotgun. Oh no, a Savage 99. That's looks to be in good condition too. Various handguns. Oh, there's a P38 in there. Hopefully that's airsoft. This is just an aside since we seem to be swamped in time. When I was first buying handguns, I had a very modest budget, and I wanted to get a pistol for about $400. And if anyone's in this situation and they're looking at getting a handgun and they're considering between buying one that's in current production or one that might be older and have some history to it, my choices were between a P38 and a used 1911. And I bought the used 1911, which is still manufactured today and therefore not rare, but the P38s have kind of, they're a bit of history, and they've seemed to have dried up. The cost of those have gone up. So anyone looking at purchasing any firearms, look at, future availability as part of your equation. No, they don't count them as toys. More feedback, toys and airsoft guns and stuff like that. Like someone was saying that 50% of the firearms turned in were toys, but not guns. Yeah, they didn't count them as toys. They would count them as guns because 700 seems really nice in a headline. So I'll pick another article here. This is some Toronto news. Victims of the Bombay Bell bombing are filing suit against the Bombay Bell restaurant, where the bomb blast injured 15 people in May. The plaintiff each plaintiff is suing Bombay Bell and the Mississauga restaurant for $1 million, according to a statement filed. Investigators have alleged 2 suspects detonated an improvised explosive device in the restaurant on the evening of May 24th before running away and jumping into a vehicle, which is unidentified. But no arrests have been made yet. The victim's statements claim that the restaurant failed to hire a sufficient amount of security and alleged that it was embroiled in an ongoing turf war with a rival business, and they should have known it could have been the target of a bombing. And I kind of pointed out that the word bomb is right in the name of the restaurant. So I don't know. I remember watching a TV show a while ago, and they were talking about if you're at a baseball game and you get struck with a baseball, you cannot sue because there is a reasonable expectation that you could be hit by a baseball. But like if you're out at a music concert and you get struck by a baseball, then possibly you could sue because there wasn't a reasonable expectation that you would be struck by a baseball at a music concert. Why is it the restaurant's fault? I don't know. They're saying that we believe that we were carnage in a turf war between individuals that we didn't even know that the turf war was going on. We believe the tragic incident could have been prevented and that the restaurant owner or manager failed to protect our safety. So, in a brief email statement, Peel Regional Police noted that there had never been any reported threat or indication there was any ongoing turf war with regards to the Bombay Bell. And the spokesperson for the Bombay Bell is deferring all questions about the suit to the Peel Police. And the Peel Police are not involved in the civil litigation. So, sounds like a bit of a rigmarole. Yes, because people are greedy. As soon as there's suffering, then people will. I don't know if the lawyers go and seek them out or if they seek out the lawyers, but there's people can then go and try to get some, because you can then play the victim card, and there's sympathies given out by the majority of people, to people who've been victims, and This is a great story. This is progress. Finally, true progress in North America. And Canada is the leader of this progress in North America. We have the first ever in Toronto, North America's first sex doll brothel. So that's going to happen. Aura Dolls is slated to open at 4632 Yonge Street on September 8th, taking over an old tanning salon. Oh, wait a minute. This is confusing. This is a very poorly written article. They're now saying that this is the second one to open in Toronto. But anyway, these are. I was wondering how the dolls, if they would get minimum wage or not. Maybe they'd unionize. Yeah, this article is the headline was enough for me to put it on the episode tonight, but it's, as I read it, it's from Blog.to and it's not well written. So yeah, it's finally some true progress. This is for people who are even too shy to talk to prostitutes. You can just get a prostitute doll. Yeah, clients will be able to pay a rate that starts at $80 for a half an hour with one doll to as much as $480 for a 4-hour session. It's a pretty expensive afternoon. And if you want $2 at once, well, the price goes up double. Isn't that interesting? Who would have thought? Anyway, so the math is sound. Now, it's just amazing to think about the, there's probably going to have to be some, is the doll price comparable to a session with a human? That's a good, valid question from the YouTube comments. I'm not sure. I don't have a clue. If anyone has any, it wants to shout that out in the YouTube comments, what they charge when they prostitute themselves out. We can compare that. So anyway, I'm wondering about some sort of, there must be some sort of restrictions, and there's going to have to be all sorts of sanitation guidelines like created and published for this. You know, geez, you have to wipe down your weight bench when you go to the YMCA. So I assume these things must get quite a steam clean. So according to Aura, the dolls are thoroughly sanitized. And on top of that, the entrances and exits are located separately to ensure privacy for clients. And for all you guys or gals or any of the other genders who are going to plunk down that $480 for your 4-hour session to act out fantasies with a doll, the parking is free. So you don't need to worry about that. You can just park your car, go in through the the private entrance, and then 240 minutes later, you just exit out the rear, you know, with a fulfilling experience. Oh, here it is. So this isn't even, yes, this is great. This is Blog TO. Hell of a headline. Has nothing to do with reality. Apparently, Toronto's first sex doll brothel is Kinky's Dolls, which opened last year. So it wasn't even recently. It was like over a year ago. So here I am, you know, with all these $480 laying around, and I could have been, you know, spending quality afternoons in a place at 507 Champagne Drive. So apparently, similar establishments have already been opened in Europe, and the first one in the world opened in Germany in 2017. So Canada's not too far behind. That's pretty good. Because, anyway, it was interesting. It was reminded of a yeah, so many follow-up questions. There was I saw an interesting argument where a feminist was talking about how sex dolls were rape, because when a man has sex with a sex doll, it cannot grant consent. So therefore, all sex with a sex doll is rape. And then when the interviewer asked then the feminist if it was rape when a woman used like a dildo or a vibrator, she just couldn't even comprehend how he was coming to that conclusion, like how he even came about having that question. It just was beyond them. Josh G is saying, do they go by date of manufacturing, or do the dolls have ages like wine? I don't know. It's just, I can't tell you. They're made of high quality TPE silicone, and the dolls are the closest thing you can currently get to a real human, minus the heart and the brain, and you know, the alive part. So, which really, like, who? Yeah. Anyway, that's awesome. So these are quality items. looking up another article here. I'm running my one-man show. This is from the Edmonton Journal, and questioning when can you shoot someone to protect your property? The rural crime plan says around Edmonton that the landowners want clarity on when you can shoot someone on your property. So, former sergeant with the Calgary Police Service advises everyone to call the police first, of course. But in many rural areas, the police can be like 20, 40 minutes away, sometimes an hour. This isn't news to anyone. But the former Sergeant Mike Ellis of the Calgary Police Services said when he started attending town hall meetings on crime in rural Alberta, he started to see issues the other way, and he was hearing more and more stories about how far away the police were. Hearing the police aren't even responding at all. When you think about it, like the travel time for police really reduces their effectiveness. No fault of police officers, just a reality of the travel time. So if you have like a service area of like several thousand people, if you get like 4 calls that have you darting all over the place, like that can be like your entire shift in travel just going to like 4 calls. Meanwhile, like you could have gotten many times that number of calls in. And like I just don't know, like if someone was creeping around someone's tool shed 12 hours ago, like at what point would you just say that that one probably isn't a going concern at that time. So I've never really believed in things that interfere with people's right to defend themselves. I would like to think that all good, honest people have a right to defend their lives and property, not necessarily with lethal force. But I'm well aware that property is purchased with money, and money is basically your time, your life, placed, multiplied by skill and place of business, So basically, like, when they take something or damage your property, they're taking part of your life away. You will then have to, apply yourself and make more money just to get back where you were. So this is brought to focus during the Gerald Stanley trial when he was acquitted earlier in the year of shooting 22-year-old Colton Boushey, which then launched a debate on self-defense that's still going on in the West. And the YouTube comments are still going on about the sex dolls. I wonder how much it would cost to outright buy one. I remember years ago seeing them, and I'm talking years ago, like over a decade ago. And at that time, the high quality ones, I don't know if they're now more expensive because of inflation and maybe the minimum wage as a factor. But I think at the time they were like 5,500 American for like one of the high quality ones with So anyway, if you wanted to run a competing brothel, get a steam cleaner, some bottle brushes. Inflation, yes, thank you. Wow, I got to tell you, you really cut through the old news stories when there isn't a lot of cross conversation and chatter going on. Here's a story we touched on a couple of weeks back. We mentioned there was a OPSU strike going on at a local healthcare building in my city, Owen Sound. It's not mine. I don't own it. If I did, I would sell it and move away. But I live in Owen Sound, and there was an instance where a replacement worker, not a scab, I believe someone was talking about the difference between the two, and a scab is someone who does work for the company who then crosses the picket line to go to work. But this was a replacement worker, so not a previous worker. And they were trying to cross the picket line, and they were being yelled at for minutes, and they were like shaking the car and yelling with a megaphone. The replacement worker suffered some sort of stress attack and ended up being rushed to hospital and died, I think, within the day of, for the result of their attack. So things are still going on. The strike is still ongoing. I think it was Thursday. Police were requested to attend the strike at the Ontario Public Service by the Ontario Public Service Unions Local 276 several times during the Thursday due to picketers ramping up on their strike. So they're not even local workers. What they do is they bus in other workers from the same union, and since it's not their town, they kind of seem to be more able and willing to block traffic and yell at people and do whatnot. And but the thing is, like, this is people seeking out healthcare, and a lot of people don't like going to the doctor and just suddenly try to pull into the healthcare place just to have your car half stuck on the street as picketers block you for 2 or 3 minutes at a time until they, let you through. Tensions are rising, and people are beginning to run through or rev their engines and gun their engines and race towards the picketers and then stop. Or in one case, they didn't. They revved their engine and then they went around and struck a picketer, knocking them down and driving over their foot, breaking their foot and ankle in 3 places. So anyway, that was just some follow-up to that one story about the replacement worker who had died. Things aren't getting better. They're still not having any talks. The two sides haven't talked since mid-July, and things are not getting any better. So 2 picketers sent to hospital. So I don't know. I could do my take on it. I might as well. I'm here. It's a public sector union worker. It tends to make about like 10% more than a non-union worker in the same sector. So the fact that they continue to go on a strike when things aren't going well, and that's, to me, it just seems a little too grabby. Like you would think if they were below average, then the union has all rights to step in and say we need to be treated above average. But there just seems to be a lack of consideration and regard to tax money in general. So there's always more tax money, isn't there, folks? So anyway, what I don't like specifically about public sector unions is like if there's 2 businesses in town that I could go to and one is unionized and the other isn't unionized, and I can choose to go to one. If they're in private sector, I can choose to go to the one that offers me more value for my money. It might not necessarily be the one that isn't union. It might be the one that is union run. They might offer better service or whatnot. But anyway, yeah, that's my whole take on the public sector unions. Don't have a problem with unions in general, but public sector unions, when you band together to increase, basically become a greater burden to taxpayers. But to me, that just isn't something I can really agree with. John was saying, I look at it regarding trespassing and whatnot out in the prairies. I look on it from identification of nefarious intent. If you're found in or on private property, let's say in the middle of the night, or forcing your way in broad daylight, I don't care what your premeditated plan was, your criminal intent is clear. You should have to wait to see how dangerous that intent was. Should not have to wait, yes, to see how dangerous that intent was. Well, that's what, John, that's what pissed me off about the Colton Bushi thing. We were just talking, I think it was last week, about the shooting in New Brunswick, where Trudeau went and he visited the family of 2 fallen police officers, but he never went and visited the families of the other 2 people killed in the incident. And then they when Trudeau did give the condolence call to the spouse of the one man, I believe, I think she called him a piece of shit or something like that. But it wasn't too happy. And then I recalled and mentioned on the podcast that Trudeau himself went and visited the Bushi family. And to me, everything's also tied up with firearms law when it comes to the judicial system. It always comes down to how was the gun stored, or what kind of gun was used, or did they intend to kill, did they intend to harm? And I believe that the incident should be looked at with regard mostly to the initiator. So Gerald Stanley was a mechanic. He owned his land, and people would come up and drop their cars off, and then they'd hang around his house, and he would be out in a field, or his wife would be gardening, or he'd be in a shed someplace. And so a car would pull up regularly, and he wouldn't think anything of it. And then someone could come up later, and the person could get into that car and they could drive away, and then he could get a phone call saying, "I left my truck here, please fix this," because he was I'm a mechanic. Yeah. So the fact that Gerald Stanley, felt like he needed to get a gun says a lot. But with again, it goes back to the initiator of the event. Gerald Stanley is just a man who's probably still paying for his land, or was at the time, paying taxes on the land, paying taxes on everything, and he's just trying to make a living. And then someone just couldn't stay home and just play PlayStation or do whatever, or get a job or something. They ran their blood alcohol content up to 3 times the legal limit, and went driving with some shitty .22 rifle that was loaded and in the car, and we're going onto people's property attempting to steal all-terrain vehicles. This is the family that Trudeau then goes and says, like, "Oh, things have to change because Colton Bushi died in that incident." So that's to me, that was a slap in the face. It's Gerald Stanley was the victim there. Gerald Stanley is going to have to live with the fact that he took a life for the rest of his life. Gerald Stanley will be looked upon differently by his friends and neighbors, and it's basically it's probably changed him forever. So he didn't ask for that. He was just following the rules, working, probably paying taxes, and someone else started an event that went in the way that neither of them wanted, and Gerald Stanley's forced to defend himself in court, and our Prime Minister is going and visiting the family of the instigator. So that's the current state. And we see Trudeau's campaign promises for 2019 is he's now still saying that he will make things better for the First Nations people of Canada. So he didn't manage to do it in the last 3 years, but we got a good feeling about this one. So anyway, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and listening. I'd like to thank Andrew for creating the show, and the other guys for normally being on. And I just didn't want to have one slip and fall through the cracks and have nothing on the old 27th of August here. So, but my voice is cracking despite the whiskey. There's a good swig. I had mentioned to tune in this week for a t-shirt contest. So I've been so busy at work. I recently got a promotion at work, and we are going absolutely crazy. But I said I would have a t-shirt contest, and I'm going to have a t-shirt contest. It's just not going to be a particularly fantastic t-shirt contest, which I'm going to think one up, because I really like the ones where the listeners write in do something interactive, like post something they saw on Facebook, or like triggered leftists, or write a haiku about Harambe or something like that. But I think for this contest, just going to have anyone. If you've liked the Facebook page and you've subscribed to the YouTube channel, then maybe I don't even know if I can legally say that anymore. I don't know the legal ramifications. Tell you what, share the episode link that happened on the Canadian Patriot podcast. If you do that by this time next week, I will put you in some sort of simple text or notepad thing, and I'll run a random number generator and pick one of you, and then I will contact you. We'll mention you on the show and thank you. And you can, I'll contact you. You can give me the size of shirt you want, and we will get you a Canadian Patriot podcast shirt. And I tell you what looks good is the black ink. Yeah, you could add a comment then, Victory. Thanks about sharing it. I recommend what I think is looking really good lately is someone requested one and I made it, and I wish I had made more, but the Canadian Patriot podcast logo in black on a charcoal is a pretty good looking shirt. So I will get that and mail it out to you free of charge, because that's what a contest giveaway is. Yeah. Thanks, John. I didn't go as smoothly as I would have liked it, and I really did tear through all of my articles that I wanted to touch on. And there were so many times when I was prepping the show notes, I was just like, oh, I won't have time to talk about that. And the next thing you know, it's like 9:36. Luckily, we were able to drag the sex doll brothels out for about 36 minutes. Thanks, Josh. Sounds like a good shirt to add to your collection. Josh has a few Tim's Good t-shirts. Quite good. So you can go to ragnaroktactical.ca. You can buy some tacos. You can buy some tourniquets. You can buy some gear. Pick up some training. Take a Ragnarok Tactical course. You can visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com, and you can go to Facebook.com/Tim's Good T-shirts. Get a Tim's Good T-shirts. They're quite good. Thank you all again for tuning in. And I would like to remind you that you are the true North, strong and free.